Some of the most important things is I'm not really a musician. I'm not a composer. I'm not a musician. I'm first and foremost a human being. And that this is the art that we do as humans to share and to communicate and to kind of enshrine our experiences. And I think it's really, really important because a lot of times I see people who draw a box about what they do. And being a composer is squarely in that box. And I feel that that's such a pity because being a composer, being a musician, being whatever you say you are is actually so much more than that. So I think of the first pillar as I'm a human being and not so much any, deeper than that, because I think that opens up a lot of other ways we can practice art and communicate with other people. The other thing I find really important as a pillar is the idea of curiosity. I think that we have to be curious about our environments. We have to be critical about what we see and we hear and we understand. So, constantly learning, constantly being interested, constantly asking questions, poking at, things that pique your interest, stuff like that, I think is really, really important. And it might seem very separated from art, but it's to me, something that I cannot not do. I cannot look at something and not ask it questions, for
Yeah.
example. And so that is something I find really important in my creative practice, is to just dig into the little holes and see what you find and ask the questions that need to be asked, even if they're just difficult questions or, stupid questions. So that's another thing I think is really, really important to me. And then, the last thing is probably something that you've heard a lot before. And that is that you shouldn't be afraid to fail. You should explore as wide as you feel comfortable doing, or as wide as you should be doing. And if you fail, you fail. And every failure is not actually a failure. It's just another step toward learning about the next thing or doing the next thing. And I feel like a lot of people forget that, because when I was a young composer, I always thought that the piece I'm composing now needs to be the masterpiece. Like, it needs to be something that people will look back on and be like, this is such a good piece. It's going to be the best piece. But, a teacher told me, like, yeah, that's bullshit. There's no such thing as the best piece. Every piece is just another step toward the next piece, and that there shouldn't be something, on your shoulder telling you this is not good enough. You just do it, you learn from it, and then you move on. So that's kind of how I also see just being a composer, is just you learn and you continue learning. And there's no shame in failing at anything or making a mistake or doing something wrong. It's just part of the process. And I think once I figured that out, that was a beautiful day. So many butt sticks decided to, like, not
Yeah.
exist anymore.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and, I mean, that's something I still continue to grapple with myself is, this idea that, like, every piece should be better than the last. Whatever, better is completely subjective, and better changes every day for all of us,
Hmm.
and, I've run up against my own disappointment, and, I might write, like, a quote, unquote, "great piece," and then the next one is like, "Oh, that's not what that was, it's not quite what I want it to be," and just kind of realizing that it's okay to live with that. I
Hmm.
think it's so important.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm so thankful that I learned that when I was younger and not had to wait, decades to
Yeah.
figure that out.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Micromaker by Loose Leaf Transmissions. We hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the inner workings of the creative life. If this resonated with you, be sure to check out the full conversation on Music Maker with Tyler Kline, a podcast exploring craft and process, philosophy and inspiration, and the honest, often messy parts of being an artist, creative uncertainty, purpose and identity, and resilience. You can find Music Maker wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting musicmakerpodcast.com.